dove, descending, breaks the air with flame of incandescent terror, of which the tongues declare the one discharge from sin and error. The only hope or else despair lies in the choice of pyre or pyre, to be redeemed from fire by fire. Who then devised the torment? Love. Love is the unfamiliar name behind the hands that wove the intolerable shirt of flame, which human power cannot remove. We only live, only suspire, consumed by either fire or fire. Welcome, we made it. Okay, it was my fault this time with my power adapter. You guys, we need the fire out of the wall to be able to do tonight's stream, so thank you for waiting. Firepower, dove power. So I was thinking about what it's been like since our intermission. We had those pigeons sitting on the Royal Theater down there in Land of Enchantment in Santa Fe, and took our break off for the one Christmas. We had second Christmas now too, right? And I and then I got sick, right, obviously, so I've sort of been struggling through voice and movement and rom-coms and doom, and I'm like, dude, how are we gonna pull out of this one? How do we get out of the doom? I think we're now, so that we had our intermission and we sort of had 20, I lost track. I do actually pay attention how many episodes we've done and which one this is. I'm not sure. 25, 6, yes. I'd say. But that we sort of did a whole season, and you get the kind of energy off of, we can do it. We can make it to the end of, the fullness of the end of the season. And then Christmas hit, and then, now where are we now? Right? Which church season are we trying to fly through now? It's the second season. It's like second. We got first season. Now we have second season. Can we make it? Can we make second season have the same energy? Which is also kind of our cultural problem. So we're going to read some poetry tonight, I think, because how else are we going to solve our cultural problem?
I was just thinking, we're in second. We had our first Christmas, then we had second Christmas because we're double dipping. So we're coming up to Epiphany, the Feast of the Epiphany soon.
Second Epiphany. This is right. Good. So we need a second Epiphany off of the insights that we soared with in our first season, and now we're in the second season. And the thing is, the second season is always hard, right? You have the novelty of the opening layers of things, and then we've kind of made some promises that we're going to solve all of the problems out there. have these dove this dove flying about into the internet, into the magical portals that we speak to each other through, and she has got to find some hope and joy and olive branches on the tossing flood of this cultural catastrophe that is. I think no, truly, I'm describing for real the problem of like,
Yes.
once you've done a course and you repeat it, you're repeating it and you're carrying on, and we've given you all enough. I was also thinking of this terms. This is like 102, right? Pigeon 101. We gave you the pieces, the sort of most basic elements of this arc that we were trying to build. We've talked about Mary, we've talked about Christ, we've talked about McLuhan, we've talked about the rave and the celestial sort of longing that we have for the light and the angels, and the way we get trapped into surrogates for that dance. And we've talked about the why we're in the flood that we are, with the vending machine and the empire, and who are we, what kind of culture, what is exactly we're looking for. And this is going to feature in our conversation tonight, right? Because some of what's been happening is through the English and the language, and you and I have had a few backs and forths. It's like, I like English. No, I don't like English. What are we going to do with English? English as this linguistic crux for us of identity, but also magic spells. And we've talked through the gaslighting, and we've talked through the sort of where the cultural energy is coming from, the art and the icons. I mean, guys, we've solved it all, right? And yet nothing. We've sort of peeled back at least what we knew. I think some of what you and I knew setting out on this journey, and now we're in for it, right? We're really, really in for it. We have to find the horizon, the part two. Part 2 is always hard. And maybe part 3 and the part 4 and part 5. We're almost, this is actually topical, that those of you who are hanging on for the first act of Draco Alchemicus, right? We're almost done, sort of close, right? And we have to do pictures, and there's going to be a Kickstarter. We're going to try that again, right? But the setting up the story, setting up the actors, setting up the characters and the problem, and we're all in it. What are we going to find? How are we going to not just sort of do the opening burst of the dance, but really carry this through into meaning?
Yeah, as you were describing that, I had the image of dental surgery.
Oh, golly, dental surgery.
Well, it's like we have Act 1 of Draco Alchemicus, which has been setting everything up. Up in the story,
right?
And looking at the deluge that we're in right now as a culture. So it's like, when you got a little bit of a toothache, you think, oh yeah, I should probably go and check that out. And then whenever you see a dentist, they're just
the rot has gone down into your gums, and you're gonna lose the tooth,
and it's in the jaw, and then suddenly it's like, okay, you just we've got to tear through your bone and rip everything out, and it's way worse than you thought it was. Yeah, so it's kind of felt like that a little bit. Like it hasn't been a comfortable experience setting up this story. Doing the arc parallel to writing Draco Alchemicus, it's it's like we're trying to find stability in a very chaotic stability in it, and it feels like the more we've set all of the problems, the more we can't, there's no copium, like we can't run away from it now.
There's no copium left at
There's no
all.
copium left.
Yeah.
Yeah. The dog
The
agrees.
dog agrees.
Uh, headaches worn off mid-surgery. Yeah.
Well, so there's a bit of news down under in your neighboring country,
Mm-hmm.
whatever relationship you all in Oceania have to each other. That what Arden Jacinda has just resigned.
Oh, I didn't even know.
Did you know that? This literally hit like an hour or two ago on all of the news flashes, the breaking 911, and Telegram was not quite as alight with the news as when Russia invaded the Ukraine last year. That was amazing, right? Watching that blow up on Telegram and saying, "Wow, I wonder when we're going to hear about this in the normal news." My husband actually saw about Arden, and I'm like, "Has that just happened?" What because I was surprised. I hadn't seen it on Telegram yet, and it was within minutes, right? So we're in this, and what the wannabe globalists are in Davos right now doing their meeting.
Yes.
And feeling, it sounds to me like from some of the reports that they're having, that they're feeling kind of like they've lost the thread too, that they want to still be in control of the story and calling all the shots and being able to set up whatever drama we're going to find ourselves in next. And they don't seem to be feeling it. They don't seem to be having a sense that anybody's listening to them anymore.
Yeah. Well, the bluff of their poker games kind of went off. Like everybody,
right?
Yeah, like the couple of journalists that were following the Pfizer CEO around were asking him very blunt questions in the street. He was just walking and saying, "Have a good day," and they completely ignored him and kept following him up through the streets. And the public seemed to not have this fear of the actors anymore. The corporate heads that are out there at the front. I mean, that Arden has resigned. She was looking very much like the entity, the entity, whatever it is. The
Gollum-like.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, she's in her press report. People were commenting, it's like she looks like she's about to cry. Right. So something's.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is like as we talked last week, like we've been in this doom arc for some time now, and the feeling of, I mean, not even just losing the thread, but the waters swirling around, and nobody, even the people that claimed all along, all these last several years, to have the answers and be able to tell us what to do. I mean, Arden, right? She was big on telling everybody what to do. You must do this or else we're going to put you in jail, and you must do that or you're all going to die. And that the confidence that they have in their doomsaying looks like it's a bit frazzled.
Well,
it's a bit frayed.
It's interesting because she was probably the creepiest gaslighter of all of the oceanic gaslighters that were declaring mandates. Basically, grinning ear to ear nonchalantly at the idea of locking New Zealanders out of polite society. Absolute disregard for the fact that she was ruining people's lives. And about her while she was doing it, which I'm not sure if you guys in the States have the same thing. Have a little bit more of a more forceful, honest authoritarianism, but down here it's it feels like the leadership speak to the public like they're in kindergarten. It's very infantilized. So she was gaslighting you with this odd cheerfulness of someone who was hosting Sesame Street but at the same time destroying everybody's lives. But you say that she's frazzled.
Well, she looks a little but I mean, she's saying it's something like by February 7th or something. But anyway, she's just given a press conference saying she's stepping down. Party's over.
There was footage of her doing this, you know, during the press conference, and somebody had tweeted, "I've had it my entire life. I know one when I see one." So, in terms of the confidence of what they were doing, I mean, how much of that was aided by chemical assistance? You know, what does it take?
Oh, probably most. I mean, some kind of chemical assistance, one way or the other, right? It's. I mean, it doesn't. If she's doing that with her nose, it's suggestive, right? But the thing is, they were playing this. You know, we're going to force this chemical assistance on everybody else. As if it would be. I don't know. I'm still not. I'm still sort of. I don't really believe that most of those people understood what they were doing. I'm not on the complete, you know, it's like complete they were giving people cancer and blood clots and strokes and stuff, and they meant to. I don't think that. I think they're in that kindergarten teacher mode that you're describing her voice using of
Mother knows best.
The in-group that have all the meetings that decide for the good, and Arden and that group, I think, I don't, and I'm still not sure whether there's a layer, like, so we're playing a lot of this, sort of thinking this through plot wise in Draco Alchemicus, right?
Yeah.
It's like that the opening act that we've been working on since about almost this time last year, right? It's been a long journey setting up this first book. That the dragon is the ruler of the city, but we have various characters that are coming in as aspects of the dragon, so they act in the, you know, the conversations with the human characters, but we ourselves, as we're right here, I was like, are we going to show I mean, I think the dragon's going to have to show up eventually, right, as an actual on stage character, but there's also the feel of the dragon's power to convince everybody that they're in the right court, right, and that they're going to be able to be in the game, and that if they play the game well, they'll have access to the kinds of, you know, medicinal powers that the dragon is named for, right, his alchemical powers, and that if they have that access, then, I mean, you know, just the surfing on the desire for that level of power, I can see. I mean, that's why we were making jokes about Arden looking like Gollum, right? It's like she's been so captured by the precious and this desire for the control and the goodness, that controlling goodness,
which is not goodness.
Well, so in the poem that I started us with, you know, the pyre and the pyre and the fire and the fire, and that intolerable shirt of flame which human power cannot remove. I mean, there's a lot in this. There's a lot in this imagery, and I think also what I realized, kind of what we want to do in this episode, is help people understand. In my head now, I'm telling you now. Help.
See, she tells me last.
So, I tell you last. It was in my head earlier. That we've said that the Mosaic Arc is about, like, why poetry, why Christianity, why the Dragon Common Room. There is a why behind this journey that we've been working on, and that I realized what we've been doing. So as I said earlier, we've been putting together all these pieces, right? You need some sense of Christianity at this powerful mythological symbolic level that most people don't really talk about. I mean, even in the general, like, you know, online conversations, in my experience, there's layers and layers that we have yet to tap, right? Hopefully we can keep going, right? Because the inexhaustibility of the imagery that we are shown in scripture, I mean, it should be inexhaustible. This is God we're trying to have access to. And only so much of God has been revealed to us, and so only so much. But no matter what, I mean, the medieval commentators on scripture have this sense that it doesn't matter how many times you've read it, you're always going to be finding new connections and associations and revelations. It's so deep, right? So that we needed to sort of give people the beginning version of what would I say if I'm trying to show you what Bede reads or what Rupert of Deutz reads, right, when he's going into scripture and finding all these layers. And we needed to give some sketch of the history that we've been thinking about, the history of the spice trade and the history of the empires and the history of modernity. We've realized we've worked through all of this, right? And then looking at things like the poets and the artists who start like just sticking their hands in the electric socket. This generate yay, for example. And that all of that somehow in our minds, we were very, very clear about this, even if you all have maybe not understood where we were going. We did know where we were going, but we just needed to put all the pieces in there to finally show you maybe a little bit of it. Like, what is it we're trying to access through saying iambic pentameter or bust, right? This problem that we started in the Dragon Common Room several years ago, when I just had this insight, right? It wasn't even it wasn't a big plan. Like, I'm going to write epic poems with this group that I put together. There was nothing that clear in my sense of we've got to somehow deal with all of this in poetry. Otherwise it never grounds, right? I'm happy to report that my laptop is now charged and it's out of the red and the battery, that we needed somehow to find the grounding for this energy that's flying all over the place. And I just had this, sort of nudge, I guess. I mean, this for me is the way I would say, I hope not proudly, that Mary and the Spirit have worked with me in my life. It's like there's this ping. You sort of go, you're going to do this now. And you're like, yeah, I had these other things that I was thinking of doing and I thought they were important and would like help my career. And the ping is just like, you're going to do this. You're going to do this. Yeah. And I'm like, I guess I'm setting up this Dragon Common Room. We're going to learn to scan. Because it really matters, right? It's everything hinges on the poetry. Why? Why does it all hinge on poetry? Why does everything hinge on our rediscovering or discovering or revealing or unveiling or building this new arc of symbol and language and sound and music? Because otherwise we're all going to drown.
So many things.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first
did you write all that down as I was sparking? So you have been having some interesting thoughts and arguments in your Telegram and other online places about language recently. Since our doom spiral, right? The doom, yeah. Ooh.
This week, which has been really fun.
This is just like New Zealand. Maybe Jacinda has to resign because, she knows the government's changing. And I think, and you were sparked by that because Vox did some post talking about how, the Chinese are going to be in Australia soon, which they're already there, right? So yeah.
Oh, it's already happened. Like, I mean, the changes in Australia have been so in the last 30 years that it's not a surprise, because we've completely abandoned the British foundations of the entire country in favor of the foreign relationships with our immediate neighbors to the north, disconnected from Britain. I mean, there are some trade relationships that are being maintained, but it's almost like having a friend that you met at a party, and then you sort of exchange numbers and you keep in contact once every 6 months, and then you know each other on social media, but that's about it. So you can kind of you know what I mean, like in this world of really odd legal relationships, that's how I feel like we have a parasocial relationship with the British, because we can see their social media, we know what's going on in their lives, but we have no immediate contact with them. We're so days that it's kind of like, oh, that's nice, you guys deal with those problems. We're now facing Asia. So I mean, I have thought about it for a little while, you know, whether or not I should actually go and Vox publish that blog, and I thought, oh no, now I've got to. But mostly because for me, it's not the utility of the language. It's not just the having the utility of, you know, of being able to have that instant communication. The language is an entire psychological reality that is distinct from the psychological reality. So I like looking at other languages for that reason, to see how people think within the matrix and get inside their head a little bit. And then there's a lot of room for creativity, because it's something like having multiple personality disorder, but it's not disordered. Multiple personality order. You get to translate yourself into another linguistic frame somehow, and it's very relaxing if you're someone who's tired of being because you get a holiday from the literacy for a moment, and you're the foundations of the other language. Anyway, so looking at Mandarin and a little bit
You have a name. That Hand-Drawn Bear gave you a name.
Oh,
yes?
yeah. Hand-Drawn Bear gave me a name because I said, okay, I need Chinese name. Well, this has been something for a long time. Why is everybody arguing over cultural appropriation in the West? For me, it was like, okay, if you go to France, you should appropriate French, right? This is like the schizophrenia of being in the New World West, where people are living right next door to another culture, and that they're going to exist in permanent cultural apartheid. I mean, that's like it's mental. Where we get a lot of migrants, Chinese migrants, and they take on. And so I said, okay, well, if we're going to get Mei Ling from Shanghai, who's called Francesca, then I want a Chinese name. So Hand-Drawn Bear gave me one, which is really cute. So I think she said it's like singing pigeon in Google, but she said it was roughly translated as a pigeon who crows poetry. So I think that's pretty cool. So yeah, I got a Chinese name now.
Pigeon who crows poetry.
Yeah, it's good. We got a crow in there.
Crow poetry. Yes, no, yeah. I know, it's everything. It's perfect.
I was pretty excited about it.
It's the goth. And then it's the goth dove crowing poet. You know, the goth dove poet. Something. Yeah.
Yeah. It was cool. The language is written, and you know, just the basic things, and laughing at this because I feel like it's justified my grumbling over English a little bit more now. I'm starting to be able to articulate what bothers me about English, because I was speaking English. You said, no, don't say that, you know, English is beautiful. We can do
no, I didn't say don't say that. I just say I love English, and I'm you know, I'm very good at learning to read other languages, and I seem incapable of learning to speak other languages, which I had the comfort of my dissertation advisor telling me once, well, she's found that, you know, if you become very, very strong in one language, it becomes harder. I don't know. that I don't think I'm trapped in English, because obviously I, you know, can read other languages, but what I do love about English is what we're exploring in the poetry is how it can speak across so many different registers, precisely because it's a completely mongrel, but whatever it is, right? It's gone through so many mongrelizations and creolizations and dogginizations and such. There was a cute little video that one of the chat found with the guy talking about speaking Anglish instead of English, saying if you spoke what we think of now as English, but without all of the French and Latin and All of the
Oh
other
yeah.
the words that came into English after it was Old English, and but the thing is, Old English. I'm working right now in um my campus teaching. We're doing Anglo-Saxon England, right? And so every few years, I sort of glance longingly at Old English and wish I could read it better. It's really, I mean, it's as Germanic as you get, with the inflections and the conjugations and the complexities of the nouns, and the genders and everything. Modern English is wiped, all of that's wiped out. All we have, English is, quote, I don't know whether it's hard or easy to learn. It's hard to learn to pronounce. It's easy to learn to speak because, presumably, because the world did, it's already a pigeon.
Yeah.
It's been pigeonized so many times from Old English, which the Danes, leaving the Danelaw, it sort of gets the Old English loses its particularity, and you end up with Middle English, and the Middle English has to be Frenchified because the Normans are all in control, and then you get the all of the contacts with all of the peoples in the colonial period, and so you get, I guess, Spanish, and by the end of it, it's like English is kind of all languages stripped down. It's a very imperial language in that sense.
Yeah, well, I was going to say I was speaking to a guy in a call center yesterday, and he was Nigerian, and yeah, so I thought that was funny because they literally do speak pidgin English.
Pigeon
Yeah,
English, pigeon English.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Well, so I thought, so I have a bit more poetry to go with this part of the theme. Those
yes.
watching will, maybe if I don't show you what book it is, you'll have to guess what it is. Okay. A reading. Words move, music moves, only in time. But that which is only living can only die. Words, after speech, reach into the silence. Only by the form, the pattern, can words or music reach the stillness, as a Chinese jar, still, moves perpetually in its stillness. Not the stillness of the violin while the note lasts, not that only, but the coexistence, or say that the end precedes the beginning, and the end and the beginning were always there, before the beginning and after the end, and all is always now. Words strain, crack, and sometimes break under the burden, under the tension, slip, slide, perish, decay with imprecision, will not stay in place, will not stay still. Shrieking voices, scolding, mocking, or merely chattering always assail them. The word in the desert is most attacked by voices of temptation, the crying shadow in the funeral dance, the loud lament of the disconsolate chimera. I thought that was topical.
Definitely.
Poets do try to explore this problem of words and their limitations and their bounds and their breaking. I was like, but I kept thinking about this when you were in the fights in the
Oh,
telegrams, which I want you to tell people more about. Okay, so you were thinking about Chinese, and we were thinking about English as different flavors of expression, and the degree to which they structure our ability to express ourselves, and therefore our ability to have particular kind of social understanding. And
yes.
here our poet is talking about the cracking, and as the words crack and sometimes break under the burden, under the tension, slip, slide, perish, right? This and I also like scolding, mocking, or merely chattering, these shrieking voices in the desert, that we are feeling. I mean, we felt this in the social media world, right? That's the language breaking down, the shrieking, the crying, the cracking. But what you're exploring with the Chinese is also the degree to which our framing by way of the language that we're speaking is cracking.
Yeah, yeah. It's it. I have to formulate this thought properly. So it was connected to somebody talking about demographic replacement of foundation populations of different nations or countries or empires. So we've talked about this problem before. What happens when a nation becomes an imperial power? So breaks the boundary of territory to become imperial. Then when it does that, it starts to absorb other nations into it. So it's like the language, a language is doing that all the time. It's not in isolation of itself. Once it's being exposed to people that are speaking that language, the idea of having going back to the idea of like a multiple personality, but the English that my grandparents were speaking doesn't really exist here anymore because they were in a completely different environment and they were talking to completely different people when they were speaking. So yeah, I was having a discussion with someone. Wait, how many people have I been fighting with this
You've been
morning?
fighting with everybody. You wait, now I forgot how it goes. Dove crowing poetry, you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just the idea of foundational population. Okay, so we talk about that, but then it's like the foundational language of that population, which is problematic because we can't crystallize the language. It's not going to be put into cryogenic storage, or it can't be kept and held away from influence of it can't be kept away from foreign influence. So
that's what that's what the poet was saying.
yes,
Words move, music moves only in time, but that which is only living can only die. That he's thinking about
yeah,
this problem of the movement in time, that music is dead if it's not in time as well. So the language has to be it has to be breathed to be alive, but in being alive it's going to be changed.
yes, yeah, and experience that speaking the language becomes infused in the language and then passed down to another generation. So the whole process of this, like, I'm going to learn another language, like, I'll give an example. So a lot of the Italian and Greek speakers that I know here, they speak 1950s Italian or Greek.
Yeah.
The way that particular kinds of phrases emerge too, like they develop very, very, very funny. A friend of mine, her mum, she used to say chops and chips, like as in lamb chops, and chips as in like fried potato. But instead of saying it in Greek, she would say it as a Greek English, like blogified English. So she would say chopsy chips, yeah, I think. Anyway, it was just
right, yeah.
So no one else speaks like that. So when all my experiences. So yeah, there's this kind of like that I'm going to learn Italian. If I learn Italian from people in Italy versus if I learn Italian from the nonnas that migrated here, I'm basically going to be learning different dialects. So you can understand them. Of course, you're going to speak the language in a standard way if you want, but the influence is going to be different because in that language have been completely different. So this is why I was arguing with who I was arguing with about the demographic shift, because the idea of that was that you can cordon off a demographic, prevent it from having any foreign exposure whatsoever, prevent it from being mongrelized. This idea of keeping it pure. It makes no sense in an imperial context. And I think it was Mel that posted the link that basically all speaking now are imperial languages unless they're Aboriginal languages, unless they're indigenous.
Right, and
tongues.
the Aboriginal. So yeah, Mel in the comments is saying Empire Language 6.
Yeah,
or Jinx.
yeah.
Wait, and Casey, English is a language that resulted from the colonization of other languages. Then it linguistically colonized the world. Mel says Gutenberg the world. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
already, and this is just to give the caution that, anybody who's had in linguistics class will say that's the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. And it's like, no, this is not. Eskimos have bazillion words for snow, and therefore it changes the way they think about, they are able to perceive snow. That there is, we're trying to, so what my version of this is, we're talking about all our online fights, which is appropriate because the speech, right? This sort of digital speech that we're caught up in the internet, and sort of the conversations that you have in the media structure that we get online and Telegram and things like that. The impatience I get to is fine. You're complaining about the loss of culture. Make some, right? And I think now I can't remember whether we've talked about this here, or I'll say, it's like the primary cultural, gift, technique. But no, I'm losing a word, right? The primary cultural thing that English did was create iambic pentameter verse. That's it, right? If you're going to be proud of something because you're of English heritage, one way or the other, everything that they have, like their music, their architecture, their Christianity, all of that's taken from other cultures. E. Michael Jones has some nice comments in his book on beauty, how painting is Italian and music is this German development, and Haydn has to come to England and write the Messiah for them because there's no like local guys who are doing Bach level or Beethoven level. If you think about it, German music is German, Mozart and Beethoven and Haydn, and maybe it's a little Hungarian list. Painting is Italian. Poetry of the sort that we're trying to learn to write in the Dragon Common Room is the great, literally English, artistic form. Yeah. So Chaucer and Shakespeare and Milton and Pope. If you want to be participating in that thing that you claim that is yours primarily because you have this language, which has gone around the world and everybody speaks it, got to be doing it in iambic pentameter, because otherwise you're not in fact exploring the true depth of this magical thing that we have, which is our words and our syntax.
Well, didn't John say the mastered the literary sphere? The poetry was a kind of outlet for them to achieve mystical transcendence that they'd lost. Protestantism and their addiction to philosophy. So certainly I'm going to have to give away who I'm reading from. It. Anybody know? Right? Mel says loop gun. Okay, so I'm reading from T.S. Eliot. Right, and among other things, Eliot is known for a famous poem called The Wasteland, which was his depressing one. I chose a different set working from tonight, which is the 4 quartets, which are his most mature poems, and interestingly the ones that had the most, so they're probably the ones that earned him the Nobel laureate in poetry. But they also had a very divided reception, because people had gotten used to him in the early 20s being depressed and fraught and Joycean in his mixing of languages and things like that. Joyce and he were friends, so after they didn't like each other to start with, and then they ended up liking each other. But what he ends up with in the 4 quartets is, one, he's converted to Anglicanism. So he's converted from his Unitarianism that he grew up with in St. Louis. I've infinity for Eliot, because we were both born in the same city, right? He's born in St. Louis on the river, the Mississippi. He says that he felt affected by that his whole life, with the sort of first 16 years of his life. And then he went off to study in England. So he becomes the most English there is, right? He's sort of an American who goes and becomes as English as you can be, because he converts to Church of England, although he and at some point describes himself as an Anglo-Catholic. So we're delving deep into Englishness by way of its spirituality and its religion. And what the 4 quartets is one of my favorite
compositions of any. It's not in iambic pentameter. I'm not sure what it's in, but apparently English critics liked it and Americans were kind of hesitant because it's so clearly Christian, right? By the end, when you get to the dove passage that I read, he is re-mythologizing the English language into this depth of understanding. And this is what started this thing off. He also, I can't remember how I saw this. I think it was a movie. I'm not sure, or something I was reading. He did a series of lectures one year in Oxford on the metaphysical poets, right? That he was trying to, I think it's a weird book. I tried reading it. It makes no sense. He kind of almost didn't do it because he kind of didn't do the research, and then he was locked in a house and he tried to write it, and he finally gave the lectures and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that he's really wrestling with, our identity, right? St. Louis, Mississippi, American identity in English. What do you do with this language and this faith, and where is it coming from? I think that's what these poems are wrestling with, which is why things like he's worried about how the language works, time, what we could do with it. It's all this sort of layering into exactly what it means to be English at all.
The American identity crisis.
The Anglo identity crisis is Eliot. Straight up. And so when Jones is saying, it's like they lose the English with the Reformation and the destruction of the monasteries. They lose the anchoring in the prayer practice, which is what we're talking about in my medieval England class, right? The founding of the monasteries in the first century of Christianity in the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. And after those are destroyed in the 16th century, you get Shakespeare trying to write some kind of mythology into the plays without getting his head chopped off. And then English has been struggling ever since to find that place of, well, it's just strange when you're talking about Chinese, that Chinese jar still moves perpetually in its stillness. That there's something, there's this longing for the anchor that we've lost, which fits our theme.
It does.
Sailing around in the internet trying to find Shanti, which is famously in the wasteland, right? Peace.
Well, this is the problem. Like, Australia is the Anglo identity crisis, perfected.
Yep.
Because a lot of Australians of Celtic descent will call themselves Anglo, in the distinction between Celts and Anglo-Saxons. They don't actually understand the distinction between the Welsh and the English, the Scottish, the Irish, even though they'll say, "Oh, I'm part Scottish and part Irish and part Welsh," but not really understanding the ethnic distinctions that they're talking about. And then in a like Anglo-Aussies, as though this encompassed all Australians prior to the mass migration down here, which I find really fascinating. I was talking to a woman, she's from New York, she's a Black American woman, and she was saying something about the tragedy that she doesn't speak her ancestral language, which is something that someone else we'll talk about today has mentioned. Our ancestral languages were speaking in English, and it was tragic. And I responded to her and said, "Yeah, I know, I don't speak mine either. It's terrible, isn't it?" And she was really confused. This kind of shock, polite acknowledgement, but I don't think it really sunk into to her what I meant by that.
Right.
That we got the same problem down here. So. Adopting Chinese, it's sort of like when it comes to that conversation on nationalism, you say, oh, okay, so you're going to learn foreign language now. I say, well, no, we've always been learning foreign languages. This is what I'm doing is I'm stepping out of one imperial language into another language. It's the that we're going to speak hand over or changing of the guard in terms of the imperial tongue that we're going to be using. Language that I can't do in another. just the necessity to breathe that Christian into
So interesting. I'm thinking about this because my class today on campus was Bede and his history of the ecclesiastical history of the English people, Historia Ecclesiastica Gentium. Golly, I should be able to do this off the top of my head. Gentis Anglorum. I hope that's right. It's in Latin, not English. And what's interesting about it is, one, what we barely know anything about the Anglo-Saxons, where they come from, who knows. King Arthur is in fact their enemy, or trying to hire them as mercenaries, hard to tell if King Arthur exists, right? The Anglo-Saxons come out of literally nowhere in terms of the stories that we have of them. It's a migration period, right? You're talking about the people that are in Australia and they've lost who they are. This is like Anglo-Saxon origins is losing who they were. They have no stories of where they came from, except for when you finally get Beowulf written down in the 11th century. And it's, I mean, there's a whole, like, I'm also reading right now a new translation of Beowulf, which is trying to show the old English layering underneath when we try to translate into modern English, and how much of the world that we lose. But that whole world is lost. It's gone. It's imaginary, it's mythical, it's an aura, right? And so one of the other things we're doing in the medieval England class is reading Michael Wood's In Search of England essays. And he had this essay on what it was like, what it's like to visit Jarrow now, where Bede lived, and how it's, up there in the north of England, and it's all industrialized, topical for our empire. And the people who come to the little study center that they have where the monastery was, the school groups and such, they don't know anything about it, Christianity, apparently. I guess the Anglican Church is not doing terrifically well, despite Eliot and C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, not so much because he was Catholic, but the early 20th century efforts to put some robustness back into the Anglican cultural life. So they don't know what a monastery was. They like the animals. They're trying to get an aura of something or other. Well, the everything that Bede is describing, he's written in Latin, and it's in fact projected onto, guess what, Rome and the Holy Land, Francia to a certain extent, Gaul and such. It's like English begins in a loss of identity when Bede is writing in, guess what, the imperial language, right? So his history of the English begins with when Caesar, came to Britain. And everything that he does in his scholarship, in his life, and even in his stories about how we English became Christian, is about incorporating them into this empire, and learning Latin, and that they have abbots and archbishops that come from North Africa and Tarsus, right, and now Turkey, Cilicia, that teach them Latin and Greek, right? So this, I mean, it's sort of almost, to be English is to be in this not only imperial context, but in this loss of your ancestral identity thanks to migration.
I miss.
Guess what? We did that in America too. There's Eliot. He apparently came from, his family apparently came from Boston, and they're Boston Brahmin, right? And that's why he's Unitarian. But he's living in St. Louis, which is the center of the movement west, and this sort of weird kind of, you and I talked about St. Louis a lot as this little Egypt area, right? Yes. Of the middle continent. Such as, like, it's this constant transplanting, and English is the only anchor that we get. Actually, the language, right? Our pirates speak. That's what we get. Everything else, the tech, the industry, even
the geographic location.
It's all we're transplant people.
The connection at the beginning of your talking.
I saw it bleak, but you're back in.
Yeah. No, I had to drop out and come back in again.
Well done. You migrated. So how are we going to solve this angst, this longing, this... Okay, I've got another reading. That was a way of putting it, not very satisfactory. Paraphrastic study in worn out poetical fashion, leaving one still with the intolerable wrestle with words and meanings. The poetry does not matter. It was not, to start again, what one had expected. What was to be the value of the long looked forward to, long hoped for calm, the autumnal serenity and the wisdom of age? Had they deceived us? Or deceived themselves, the quiet-voiced elders, bequeathing us merely a receipt for deceit? The serenity only a deliberate habitude, the wisdom only the knowledge of dead secrets, useless in the darkness into which they peered, or from which they turned their eyes. There is, it seems to us, at best, only a limited value in the knowledge derived from experience. The knowledge imposes a pattern and falsifies, for the pattern is new in every moment, and every moment is a new and shocking valuation of all we have been. We are only undeceived of that which deceiving could no longer harm. In the middle, not only in the middle of the way, but all the way in a dark wood, in a bramble, on the edge of a grimpen, where is no secure foothold, and menaced by monsters, fancy lights, risking enchantment. Do not let me hear of the wisdom of old men, but rather of their folly, their fear of fear and frenzy, their fear of possession, of belonging to another or to others, or to God. The only wisdom we can hope to acquire is the wisdom of humility. Humility is endless. The houses are all gone under the sea. The dancers are all gone under the hill. Man, this is good stuff. You see how many layers he put in? This is Tolkien level layering of... I think you froze again. You need to... I can hear you, but you're frozen. You're still. You've fallen into stillness. Please blip in and out. No, you're still sitting still, very still, leaving one still with the intolerable wrestle with words and meanings. You have. I can hear you. Mel says, I need to buy more T.S. Eliot. Yes. He didn't actually publish that many poems. The Cats one, I did the Cats poems are fun. I can hear you, but I don't see you move. No. You need to try reconnecting so that we get you in your... Yes, drop in and out. Bye-bye. You're still not moving. I want you to move. I want you not still. I want you living in time and movement. Just like our language. Yes. Now you're moving. Very good. Well done.
Fantastic. Once again, the internet has given us a
we've got to, I don't know how we defeat the internet when it seems to be poetically matching us in all of our meditations.
I think it's helping.
It wants to help. That's it. It wants to help. Mm-hmm. Bless its heart. It has no heart. It's merely just waves.
Like, it's just like Jacinta Ardern.
Electric waves.
But
well, we've got the themes are pattern and age and the limited value of experience and monsters and lights, and I mean it's like that I'm only getting it as I'm reading it out loud and realizing how, I mean, I have a recording of these that I've listened to many, many times, and but not for a while, and realizing it's like, I think all of our work that we've done with our, are you still moving? Yes, you're
Yeah.
moving.
Yeah.
You sit very still and thoughtful, and then I like, wait, did she? Okay.
Because when you read poetry, I sort of get a little bit drugged by it.
You were sitting there drugged by my Eliot, their fear of frenzy, their fear of possession, of belonging to another or to others or to God. Right? You see, he's going straight into the spell casting of this language, and it's interesting because it's not really metered. It's whatever blank verse, and I don't usually like that, so that I like Eliot as kind of breaking my own rules, and he is, I think he's delving like Tolkien into the Englishness of England, which ends up with this problem of being able to speak whatever it is, and the depths of the mythology that we are always longing for, right? On the edge of a grimpen, I don't even know what that is, where is no secure foothold, and menaced by monsters, fancy lights, risking enchantment. Do not let me hear. This seems to be, and when Bede's talking about, the conversion of England, it's all about the miracles that are worked in the monasteries and the kings and things like that. That we have Tolkien as our, marker for whatever. I mean, Tolkien is this great modern imagery of the longing that the English had for that story that they never wrote down. It's almost that the Englishness of the story is that it was never written down. It's always that longing. Yes.
Because a marine trail, or the road on an ocean, changes. You're never on the same spot. You're dealing with monsters. You're dealing with lights. Maritime, the imagery that he's using, that the language itself is kind of following that. The insecurity of being on the ocean.
Well, and that fits. I mean, what we think we know about the Anglo-Saxons is they were ship people. I mean, that fits in the Beowulf. Although Beowulf isn't about Anglo-Saxons, it's about Geats and Swedes and Danes, and the Danes were in fact the enemies of the Anglo-Saxons. So it's all very complicated. It's like they don't even have their own stories. That was what Tolkien was trying to figure out. It's like, if I can go into the language, into the complexity of the philology and the history of the words, I can find the stories that we lost.
Yeah, he wanted a total recall of the entire culture.
Yeah. But it was only in the language that he could find it, because there's nothing else there, right? Everything else gets overlaid by, I mean, the Normans are French, although they're Vikings too. But the Christian culture of England is always imported. What's fascinating about the Anglo-Saxon Christian culture is it's very Eastern, right? You and I have talked a lot about this, right? Yeah. The visual art is all, iconic, like it looks Coptic and icon imagery. In the 7th century, these great teachers that came, Hadrian from North Africa and Theodore from Tarsus, were, coming from the Mediterranean, and they were, and the great book that Bede's community makes is the Codex Amiatinus, the oldest full copy of the Latin Bible, and it's clearly, showing the Bible itself. This book shows the way in which they want to be in that story. They want to be in the story of Israel. They want to, I mean, with William Blake and his, did these feet in ancient times walk upon England? It's like, are we the New Jerusalem? That goes back to, the original conversion of the Anglo-Saxons, because that's all they have. They have nothing of their own culture at all, except for the language.
Now that reminds me of someone else. Another population.
Yeah.
That reminds
Might
me
we
of
put, now we finally have the reveal of the images. Might we put T.S. Eliot next to somebody else?
Yeah, we should. Because that
Yeah, they are now. They are now. The
oh
people can
good.
see them.
Oh, fantastic. So you're seeing that beautiful man in his coat.
In his mink coat.
The
Twinned with Eliot LARPing as the great, he's got his top, his bowler hat and his umbrella and his briefcase. He's no look more English than the English.
yeah, well, the Anglo-Saxon problem seems very best and
very much to certain subset of our population as well.
absolutely.
Who, as you mentioned, you had this conversation with a woman who was saying we don't speak our ancestral language.
Yeah, yeah.
What does Ye
well,
speak, do you think? Our man in
Ye
mink.
speaks Yay. Ye speaks Yay. Yeah.
He clearly speaks dove descending. We're gonna get there, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. He's very conscious of this problem of the loss of roots and being adrift in adrift in a foreign imperial language and being adrift in the waters of maritime contest. I think whether or not he would explain it like that. He feels it. I speak English, which means I'm already degraded. I'm working in a degraded fashion. So I understand that, which is what I was trying to explain to this woman, because this is an America problem, I think, but a lot of the people on Telegrams, they have the same issue. They look at me and expect that I'm going to be hostage or that I lump myself in with Anglo identity, forgetting that we are machine people down here. Yeah, we're the byproducts of imperial and colonialism and everything. So, saying to her, "Oh yeah, we don't speak our ancestral language either," and she gets very confused because the colonialism is, it's become the go-to myth for the rest of the world, American Empire, because America's projected that mythology on everyone, whereas it's not the Commonwealth shared by the Commonwealth people, and it's not shared by the rest of the British subjects at all. And I think possibly because, I mean, in the there was never the same energy here that there seems to have been in Black America to establish a very unique ethnic identity that was not connected to the majority population in the in that. From the early days, I mean, the Anglos squashed the Catholic liturgy here. It took a very long time for Catholics in Australia to go to a priests that were going to perform the rites of the Catholic liturgy in order for them to be able to have the host. They certainly didn't retain a linguistic identity. It was religiously based. And then even in terms of the way that the church was behaving, Irish identity was kind of relegated to Sundays only, not in the North America did. But when Ye is talking about English the way he was describing it, then I hear the resonance. I understand it, because if you're inclined to feeling that lack of pigeon in English, anemia of the language, where it's had the Christianity bled out of it. You can sort of taste it, but you can feel that it's anemic as a loss of this loss of salt and light. You know, the spirituality is gone from the language. It becomes purely commercial and purely maritime. If you're someone who likes dealing in spiritual things, then English becomes it becomes a kind of fire you have to wrestle with. You don't want to be burned by it. You don't, you know, you can be conquered by its commercial, how commercial it is. Kind of work with you have to inject the spirituality into the English, bringing Christianity into English, but it's not a simple thing to do. So I think what Ye describing, I heard what he was saying. It resonated with me because Australian art is still, we haven't developed our own styles of art here. We don't have a single genre of music that's distinctly Australian. It's just West, you know, radio waves down here. So whoever is playing with English in North America and whoever is dominating radio waves, which their influence on English will hit us very, very strongly. We're, you know, forming language here in the same way that you are up there. And the radio waves are American. We're receiving American the American alchemy of English.
I was so thinking about this. Eliot, you know, I said grew up in St. Louis on the Mississippi, and the Black American music comes from the Mississippi. We sort of this you know, our Ye Eliot twinning here is revealing patterns that we hadn't been conscious of, and that Eliot, even though he, you know, becomes this Englishman, recognized that much of what he was wrestling with and trying to access was what he felt growing up. I guess he enjoyed Mark Twain and that Mississippi feel of where the folk music comes from, where the fiddle and the banjo and the there is we talked about this in my last, you know, Route 66, the summer Route 66 journey, when you're going down through there and you've dropped out again. I talk and she falls out. You've got to come back. We go down through the Mississippi and it has access to these monsters and mysteries and languages and music and who is expressing that, I think, is the problem. Guys, we got to get her back. And she's back. That when I heard the call drop, right? So we've dropped you into the Mississippi. We're thinking about the Mississippi. And I've got one more meditation from Eliot, and then I want you to answer all of this, right? So here I am in the middle way, having had 20 years largely wasted, the years of l'entre-deux-guerres, these writing between the wars, right? trying to learn to use words, and every attempt is a wholly new start and a different kind of failure. Because one has only learnt to get the better of words for the thing one no longer has to say, or the way in which one is no longer disposed to say it. And so each venture is a new beginning, a raid on the inarticulate, with shabby equipment always deteriorating in the general mess of imprecision of feeling, undisciplined squads of emotion, and what there is to conquer, by strength and submission, has already been discovered, once or twice, several times, by men who one cannot hope to emulate. But there is no competition. There is only the fight to recover what has been lost and found and lost again and again, and now under conditions that seem unpropitious. But perhaps neither gain nor loss. For us, there is only the trying. The rest is not our business. What are we going to do this raid on the inarticulate? She's smiling now. That's good.
I'm thinking the raid on the inarticulate. Yeah, it's funny. I remember seeing this video of a woman, American woman. She was doing ebonics in a kind of, standard posh British English, and she was reading a spoken word poetry about being articulate. I thought it was really funny. Switching between the registers of English and what that means. We're articulate. Art war is in the articulate. Everybody that is speaking English has been doing it for a commercial reason. So, I mean, even arguably, yay, because he's commercialized his manipulation and infusion of the English language. That's the wizardry of hip hop. It's the magic of language, but it's commercialized.
Right.
We're dealing with an imperial language commercial that's had the it's had its origins abandoned because we've abandoned religion that was necessary for English to form in the first place. So we've abandoned mythological origins of our own language.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been weaponized as a commercial, and so it's been exposed to the entire world without the fortification of its own myth. Then that is reflected in the psychology of the people that speak it as a first language. Because, like I was saying this week when I was, I'm ranting about Mandarin, but the language itself is not fortifying in the sense of guarding you culturally. It can't. It doesn't have this aspect on as like the Romance languages where you have a masculine and feminine, and you can't go into unisex hyperfeminine cis language when you're speaking in Italian or Spanish, because it's obviously going to be la luna or il sole. You cannot abandon gender in that language. So you don't have this crisis. We have it in English because we don't have gender. Even with characters, they don't reflect a kind of Mandarin, and it's the character for argument is side by side. That can't be eliminated. You can argue all you want about how sexist that is, but at the end of the day, if you eliminate the character, you've eliminated the character argument. or when you're dealing with Arabics, you have masculine and feminine even in the letters. Half of the Arabic script is considered lunar letters and solar, lunar and solar being the masculine and feminine of the Arabic mentality. So, English has nothing. English has nothing to protect us. We're dealing with a cycle that's penetrable on all sides, constantly influenced from the external, and then what we're going to give to it has almost instant effect. But dealing with this on mythological origins, it's like we can't go on like this. The language is going to I will be hyperbolic, but it's almost like the language itself is going to destroy of that language unless we can infuse it with Christianity.
A prayer. Lady, whose shrine stands on the promontory, pray for all those who are in ships, those whose business has to do with fish, and those concerned with every lawful traffic, and those who conduct them. Repeat a prayer also on behalf of women who have seen their sons or husbands setting forth and not returning. Filia del tuo filio, Queen of Heaven. Also pray for those who were in ships and ended their voyage on the sand, in the sea's lips, or in the dark throat which will not reject them, or wherever cannot reach them the sound of the sea bells. Perpetual Angelus.
Mm.
Kind of spooky. Got there. Traffic. This is, I think it's one of the few of the stanzas where he goes macaronic and is using Italian and Latin, and the ships and the sea, and this is where the English are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this maritime empire, constant in shipwreck, and it's only with the lady of the ship that they have safety or hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, without her, what do we have?
Oh, well, it's the next stanza. To communicate with Mars, converse with spirits, to report the behavior of the sea monster. Describe the horoscope, horoscopicate or scry, observe disease and signatures, evoke biography from the wrinkles of the palm and tragedy from fingers, release omens by sortilege or tea leaves, riddle the inevitable with playing cards, fiddle with pentagrams or barbituric acids, or dissect the recurrent image into preconscious terrors, to explore the womb or tomb or dreams. All these are usual pastimes and drugs and features of the press, and always will be, some of them especially when there is distress of nations and perplexity, whether on the shores of Asia or in the Edgware Road. This is a great poet. Well, so Ye has been trying with some of this imagery. Yay, you're flying too high. I'm on a mission from God. I must say the things. What things? The things. What has Ye been singing in answer to Eliot and his distress at the breakdown of our language? You were supposed to do your homework and pick us a few things to
I
play
did.
with.
I picked something, which I'm going to pull up now because I thought it was appropriate. Because I'm going to stay on my gold digging theme. And Ye knows about it, wrote a song about
Hey,
it.
that's why he's wearing that mink coat.
Yeah. So we have like the problem of maritime identity.
No, she froze. You got to reset. I'm going to wait for her to come back this time. I hear you. I don't see you yet. I don't see you yet. You're a Skype thing. It doesn't want us to tell yay poems. What the things? The things. What things? What things? You are now a phantom. Yeah, you're now. Oh, you're just the Skype-S. Okay, as the Skype-S, which is mirroring the image of the dove on screen. Tell us your poems. Ah, we're getting there. I think this fits yet again our theme. Hmm. Mm-hmm.
Imperial power on the search for resources for colonies and everything. But I think he was dealing with it on a different level. So the opening is this opening of
Mm. You're visually back now, just so you know.
yeah, so it's kind of fitting, we've got Bassie and she's saying diamonds are forever, they won't leave in the night. I've no fear that they might desert me. So we're getting to the what was the English neurosis and the neurosis of people dealing with English, that commercial imperialism without the mythological foundations of the identity, searching for something that's not going to disappear like everything else disappears. Being that
Yeah.
when you're maritime, things disappear. So he close your eyes and imagine, feel the magic, Vegas on acid, seen through Yves Saint Laurent glasses. We're getting immediately in understanding of magic, of like a casino environment, that it's commerce and magic. To me, this was like the most appropriate image of English that you could conjure in like 2 lines. Seen through Yves Saint Laurent glasses, like quotation of the foreign. You're not even looking out of a native frame of vision. You're looking through something that you bought from.
Right.
So he goes on, and I've realized that I've arrived because it takes more than a magazine to kill my vibe. Does he write own rhymes? So sort of, I think, that mean I forgot better shit than you ever thought up. So, damn, he really that caught up. Our classics, do my name get brought up? So like this is a kind of like really hyper conscious awareness that he's engaged in his coronation of life.
Mm-hmm.
Realm, engaged in magic for commerce, and the language is this kind of like superpower. The language is the magic.
Right.
And then he continues on about the reflecting on how he knew before, and then he made his money through his manipulation of English. It keeps going to the second verse. I was sick about awards, couldn't nobody cure me. So talking of only player that got robbed but kept all his jewelry. Alicia Keys tried to talk some sense to them. 30 minutes later, there seems no convincing them. What more could you ask for? The international, who complain about what is owed and throw a tantrum like he's 3 years old. You gotta love it though, someone still speaks from their soul, his soul. Changed by the change, or the game, or the fame. When he came in the game, he made his own lane. Now all I need is y'all to pronounce my name. So like, in contrast to like, this is to me, this is like just a conscious awareness that this is industrial poetry, It's industrial poetry. And the idea is that it's not for spiritual formation. It's a commercial kind of mercantile experience set up English as mercantile gets reflected in English art, which is what hip hop is. It's like this is an art for worship of God. This is an art to find ourselves in God. It's art to find ourselves in recognition, fame, wealth. So he goes on later on. My father Ben said I need Jesus. So then he pivots to the spiritual, which is odd. He's gone from incredibly secular to saying, his father says, he took me to church and let the water wash over my Caesar, his head. The preacher said we need leaders. Right then my body got still like a paraplegic. You know who you can call, you gotta best believe it. The rock stand tall, you would never believe it. Take your diamonds and throw them up like you're bulimic. Yeah, the beat cold, the flow is anemic. They're like, in the clip to this particular track, he's got the contrast of luxury against the church, and he's showing the altar. So there's this, at least for me, what I can hear is what he's working magic in a language that's magic for commerce, and crying out for the sacred inside that, and then having very, very little way of escape. English doesn't have that. The English that we're speaking now, like the English of modernity, foundation. I can't find it. I can't feel it when I speak this language, which is why I was saying I don't like English. I can't feel where I'm grounded on when I'm speaking this in this, and if I'm in others, I can kind of I get more of a sense of having some frame that isn't constantly shifting and being pushed and having these enormous, immeasurable environmental influences on it. You know, like it's kind of like the language is subject to the elements that we're not of, unless you're someone who deals in the manipulation of the elements. You know, it's like you have to be a magician in order to influence English because it's got so much the potential of the potential of this tongue to just continuously pull you into is so strong. I don't know if this is making sense.
It does, because the four quartets, right? I haven't said what they were. It's Burnt Norton, East Coker, the Dry Salvages. I'm not sure how to say that. It's supposed to rhyme with the Swages, the Dry Salvages, and Little Gidding. They're apparently places in like the Dry Salvages. That's where the section on Mary. I think there's a lighthouse off this. Apparently, they're meant to be the four elements. Apparently, I mean, it's like when you read them, it's like they're earth, air, water, fire. I guess very material, right? I've been reading the sections that are about words breaking and things like that, but they're also evocative in this. Little Bert Norton's in a garden, and then the Dry Salvages are on this coastline, and what's funny is it slips away from me exactly what they're supposed to be, but they're meant to be elemental, apparently, or maybe not, right? Mm-hmm. They're about time and things like that. So when you're talking about this language that we have, the so commercial, that's why it's so pigeoned, because it's been flattened out by all of the trading that's happened in it. It was nothing, it's like it's a trader's language, the nation of shopkeepers. Well, yeah, we've got this language of shopkeeping and trade. But also, as you're talking, saying this is the magic, this wants to be the alchemical language of transformation of the material world. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the transformation of the material world at all costs. Because the other thing is, the whole idea behind this particular of Ye's is that he's talking about diamonds of Sierra Leone, which is connected to the blood diamond, right? It's right. That this commotion, this like then of trade has everybody digging for these cold, lifeless rocks.
Right.
At all costs. It's like it's almost funny because it's the talisman of status and social ascendancy in this English world. The diamond.
Yes. Yes.
And yet they are dead things. They're dead things that are it's like this kind of, they're cold, they're lifeless, they're being mined by people which are consumed by the trade. So it's like you've got this dilemma of, do I become a magician and play in the kingdom, and do I try and influence the language? Yes, okay, so I can do this.
Right.
But what the Magic Kingdom is going to give you as it's like you're encouraged to do this, but as long as you're perpetuating the cult of those talismans, you have to be this cult that tells everybody that the fetish item is the thing that is to be like sought out, if this makes sense. So like it's like
Yes, it makes sense.
yeah, this very English colonial exchange system, which says everything is going to be fine, machine, as long as it understands that this is the particular currency of the machine. This is the fetish item. This is the particular cult we're practicing right now, which is digging for these rocks. It's all about those rocks.
Right.
That's the principal cult, which it's gold digging. So it's like diamonds are forever. Everyone's searching for something that's forever. Everyone within this English system is searching for something that is not going to degrade and disappear.
Mm.
And instead of it being it's a dead rock, we're essentially idolaters, but we don't realize it. It's interesting. The language.
Well, our juxtaposition is actually working magnificently, right? Because the four quartets are all about recognizing our life in time, and the music in time, and the need to have that fire in us, and instead we're ending up in this dead thing.
Yeah, the loveless language.
Well, so commercially, we got a super chat, which I need to read.
If it's not a blood diamond, take it back.
No. It says standing outside. It says, thank you. I always listen the next day to the podcast. Have a good night, ladies. We are trying to be in our, now that we're influencers and get super chats, right? Are we of this commercial conversation now? I'm horrified because I've also been, you guys need to pay, subscribe to, and for me to help us, it's the Forge of Tolkien subscription, because that's the one that goes to me. It would be nice to have a bit of this blood diamond support for our poetry musing. Subscribe to our channel. Oh dear.
See what we've done?
Oh no!
I'm tripping Saint Laurent song. That's what we've just done.
We've just been tripping in Vegas with the Saint Laurent song. Here we go. What we call the beginning is often the end. And to make an end is to make a beginning. The end is where we start from. And every phrase and sentence that is right, where every word is at home, taking its place to support the others, the word neither diffident nor ostentatious, an easy commerce of the old and the new, the common word exact without vulgarity, the formal word precise but not pedantic, the complete consort dancing together. Every phrase and every sentence is an end and a beginning. Every poem is an epitaph. Every poem an epitaph. And any action is a step to the block, to the fire, down the sea's throat, or to an ineligible stone. And that is where we start. We die with the dying. See, they depart and we go with them. We are born with the dead. See, they return and bring us with them. The moment of the rose and the moment of the yew tree are of equal duration. A people without history is not redeemed from time, for history is a pattern of timeless moments. So while the light fails on a winter's afternoon in a secluded chapel, history is now and England. There is another part, but I'm not sure we're quite there yet.
Okay.
Do we have another? Do we have a hope place? I have one more picture. Do we have a place of hope?
Our sanctuary. Well, I hope
Our
so.
king, our king, our
Otherwise, we're just
king.
gonna come
So
back
this
next
one,
week doom
this is.
killing again.
Does we have Yay holding up the Bible, which now I realize I should have checked what version he's holding. If it's the King James version, we're doomed, right?
That'd explain the
The
diamond.
English, the Englishness, yes, the Englishness of the King James version. I mean, we've talked about Ye before, and we talked about what he's trying to do culturally. Do we have all the things that he's trying to say? Is there an out here?
The things.
The things that the bird says.
Yeah, I don't think he wants to speak a dead language anymore. I can relate to that. The language is dead. It's a goth in the way of it's missing its own mythology right now. And because it's formed in the cauldron of commerce, it's becoming colder and colder. You know, we don't have we have the maritime gothing, the formation of our English. You know, we've become it's interesting actually. The you know, women in the workforce and being pushed outside of the home or pushed into a position where the family isn't their primary habitation. Yeah, we're still talking about a mother tongue. Women are not forming the mother tongue anymore in the home around their families, women or in their neighborhoods or in their communities. Now women are in corporate environment. Mother tongue is now caged in corporate kind of worlds. So as the generations are coming through this project instead, you know, it's not the diamond, it's not this thing that's going to be polished and then absolutely will never change and will never crack. You know, the language is moving with us in time. Women are moving in time and influencing the language, and the mother tongue is going through becoming more and more affected by commerce and less affected by holy things that are untouched by trade.
We started with Jacinda, whatever she did, resign,
Run.
Step down. Run.
Gone into rehab. Who knows?
We don't know. At least
Wouldn't
we didn't when we
interesting?
Started. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and what you said about her language and the way she was speaking to everyone was this sort of scolding kindergarten teacher, which is of course not your mother. It's the woman who is in place of your mother, because you've been given to this corporate set of children to be taken care of in the school.
Yeah, it's patterns repeated and influencing our language. I mean, I've noticed it here in Australia. I'm not sure if you guys have the same problem in America, but if you go into a retail environment in Australia, it's always women, especially, sometimes men, but almost with the 99% accuracy. I can predict that somebody will speak to me like I'm still years old when I'm in a retail space. It's strange. It's a trend. I don't know why. You walk in as a grown adult and they'll ask you how to do it with the kind of this synthetic concern, because it's the same kind of assumption of fragility that you would
Mm.
use if very small children, and yet it's being done with grown adults in an adult environment, in an adult commercial environment. So it's very strange. The mother tongue, it's not having an infusion of fire and warmth.
Ah, but it will, if we read to the end of the poem. With the drawing of this love and the voice of this calling, we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Through the unknown remembered gate, when the last of earth left to discover is that which was the beginning. At the source of the longest river, the voice of the hidden waterfall, and the children in the apple tree, not known because not looked for, but heard, half heard, in the stillness between two waves of the sea. Quick now, here, now, always, condition of complete simplicity, costing not less than everything. And all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well, when the tongues of flame are enfolded into the crowned knot of fire, and the fire and the rose are one. Pretty, and of course he's quoting Julian Norwich in there with the all shall be well and all manner of things shall be well, and there's the anchoress who lives in her little cell and can look out into the world and see how well, but is famous for her visions because she had a vision of Christ, among other things. I mean, these very complicated visions that we have in her showings, the revelations. It's so interesting to me. I've taught the medieval England class a few times, and you all on Unauthorized have benefited from that class because I did the lectures in the medieval history series based on some of that teaching that I did. But coming back to it now after we've been working on the poetry, and it's all, you come back always with the English to the poetry. Kiltz needs to come back. Let me find her again.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
This is me. I think it's been dropping. The Skype has been dropping you.
Okay.
This is not good. Anyway,
we're getting deplatformed.
We're getting deplatformed from our unauthorized stream is still there, right? So we're good. But I was saying that the things that I've been thinking about in teaching the medieval England course are folded into some of the lectures that I have on unauthorized.
Yes.
And I mean, what the sort of history is now in England, all of what we're doing is English, all of the, what we've talked about in other contexts with the white, whatever that is, nationalism, whatever that is, with the vending machine and the problem of culture. Yes. That for English, I feel like I've learned something a lot in our conversation tonight. This feeling of English is only the sea. No wonder it ends up in the Empire. No wonder it ends up in the commercial and pigeon, and yet it can be anchored as be tried to show the English could be in Christ in His majesty, in Christ as the maker, in Christ as the one who we see in those, glorious early medieval majesties, which is the image that I should have thought this through. I didn't realize we'd get here. The image in the book that they copy in Jarrow to send down to the Pope, which includes both a representation of Ezra copying all the books of the Bible, the tabernacle, which is the place where the revelation is going to happen, and then the revelation, which is Christ in majesty enthroned on the seraphim as he's seen in Revelation. And that is, for the English, that is the only mythology they have, because as Tolkien realized as a Catholic, they didn't have anything else. whether the conversion is so successful, or I'm starting to think about this, maybe we can do this one next time, the degree to which the English filtering of what they take from the Bible is in fact a expression of their deepest longings. We could get there, right? But then it folds back into the longing for the English is for Christ.
That longing for the New Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Which, if misplaced, puts you on the sea.
We're in the ark.
Yes.
We'll send out a dove. Don't leave this time. Every time I start reading poetry, your internet drops you. The dove descending breaks the air with flame of incandescent terror, of which the tongues declare the one discharge from sin and error. The only hope or else despair lies in the choice of pyre or pyre to be redeemed from fire by fire. Who then devised the torment? Love. Love is the unfamiliar name behind the hands that wove the intolerable shirt of flame, which human power cannot remove. We only live, only suspire, consumed by either fire or fire. It's love. Eliot loved Dante. So there's a lot of Italian lurking underneath his poems, and it's like I know you've spent some time in Italy, so the English looking to Rome, where when Gregory the Great sends the missionaries, but the English looking to the Mediterranean, the English have always been looking outside of England for that story that they want to belong to. I suppose. Go ahead.
As you were reading that, I was thinking we caught between l'Inferno and the Paradiso. We're caught between the Inferno and Paradise. Telephone.
In
whatever
purgatory.
Yeah.
English.
The purgatory.
Tested in our stories. I mean, English. So the English, we say they make iambic pentameter. They also make the novel, which is in the 19th century the great English art form. I mean, there's some French that work on it, but the great, it's like when English literature used to be a thing. And if you're lamenting the death of English, you should be, because it's the English literature as an academic subject. Because with the loss of English literature as something that we're trying to access, we lose that, very specifically that culture of what Jane Austen and George Eliot and Thomas Hardy and the English novelists of Dickens, the English novelists in the 19th century are very deeply responsible for our vision of this thing that we think that we have as a culture. Plus the iambic pentameter.
They're dealing with the heart literature. If we lose that in English, we're left with the laboratory of scientific exploration, and that's it. It becomes completely utilitarian and cold.
Yep.
So it is iambic pentameter or bust.
It is iambic pentameter or bust. We have now achieved explanation. Why poetry? Why Christianity? Why the Dragon Common Room? We did it. So this is our I know this is a demonstration of the method, the revelation of the method that we have been actually working towards all along with these videos and with our work in the Dragon Common Room, of why we as speakers of English need the poetry, because without it we don't have the stories that we need to be informed by, that we are informed by, and that carry our heart.
We're lost.
We're lost at sea. So Casey says, very appropriately, pray for Mary's dowry, mother of our mother tongue. Amen.
Well, who will teach us to speak? We need our mother.
That's a good place to leave it. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Amen.
Thank you all for joining us. We will find our mother next time, continuing on the Mosaic Ark with doves and fire. Good night.